Hello friends, I'm Rosa, welcome to the channel. So today we are talking about supposedly the worst books that I have read, or at least according to Goodreads. I'm a little bit surprised by some of them, I'm not gonna lie, but also some of the others, I am not so surprised. Actually, for the majority of them, I'm not so surprised, but maybe you will be though. So we're gonna talk about 10 books. I will link them all in the description box if you want to check them out. But I think that's enough for the intro. Let's get started. So the first one we're talking about actually really surprised me. Like this one specifically, I think surprised me the most. It's The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake, which is so, like, this is sitting at 3.74 on Goodreads, I think, which is not necessarily a bad rating, but it's not a good one either. As soon as ratings start to close in on like 3.7, that's a sign that the book is not well received. I will say for this one, I kind of understand it to a point. I didn't think this was like amazing. I didn't think it was bad either, but it wasn't amazing. I don't really fully see the hype. Loved the ending, but there was a lot of working up towards the ending of the book that just didn't make sense. A lot of the science stuff that is talked about is just gibberish, to be honest. I think I got a comment at some point from someone saying that if I didn't get the Atlas 6, if I didn't understand it, it's just because it flew over my head. Which seems kind of mean, I'm not gonna lie. But also, the science stuff, a lot of it doesn't actually make sense. I've read the reviews, so I'm not just saying it's gibberish. Actual scientists have said that it doesn't make sense. Is that why I think this is at 3.74? Maybe part of it, but I think some of it also has to do with the pretentious characters in it. I personally did not mind. I thought it was kind of funny following them, but I could see why it would be a little bit of a turn-off to some people, along with the confusing plot that is going on and that is unfolding throughout reading this book. So in this book though, we follow 6 magicians, or they're called something else in this story. I can't recall the name for them though. But they have been invited to the Alexandrian Society and they are supposed to work together to come up with like security systems and stuff while they also work on their abilities. They all have like their own unique ability, except from 2 of them, they have the same one. And as it turns out, I don't know how much can I say? There might be a life and death situation, and that's fine because it actually says that at the end of the synopsis. So I just wanted to be sure that it did. There might be a little bit of they have to prove themselves to survive, essentially. And the guy who has invited them into the Alexandrian Society is also very mysterious. He's clearly carrying around some secrets, and there's a whole thing. So that is the Atlas 6. Again, I see why it wouldn't be for everyone. I personally am looking very, very forward to reading The Atlas Paradox, which I do own. Have not read it yet. Also, this is the Illumicrate version, so I'm not going to read it because I am clumsy and I will ruin it. But I will be reading it at some point because I didn't think this was awful. I just don't think that it's necessarily like the most amazing book out there, but I'm super excited to be reading other stuff by Olivia Blake too because I did like her writing style, just not necessarily the science stuff was a little bit too much at times, you know. So this one is funny, the next one, number 9, because I don't really I don't know, it's Neon Gods by Katie Roberts, which is a Hades and Persephone retelling. It's a very modern retelling of it though, so it takes place in like a big city. Hades is a bit of a mysterious kind of character, at least at first, until we meet him. Yes, he does exist, I don't think that's a secret, but like society doesn't really know if he exists. The whole system with the gods and how they are supposed to take over, like there's a new person stepping into the role of, I was almost about to choose one of the Greek gods whose names I can't actually pronounce, but like there's a new character, a new person stepping into the character of, or role of Zeus, for example, or what, her mom is Demeter? Is that how you pronounce her name? I don't really know. So there's a whole system there, and so the role of Hades has been supposedly empty for a while. Nobody's taken over the role. However, there is actually a Hades who exists. He just lives in the underworld, which is basically the southern part of the city, Olympus, across the bridge. And so a lot of stuff is going on with the gods in this one. Zeus is a bit of a, Zeus sucks. He's a butthole. He has a tendency to kill off his Heras, his wives, and Persephone's mom has decided for some reason that she thinks it's a brilliant idea to marry off Persephone to Zeus, despite knowing that he has this tendency. So Persephone's like, I don't want to do it. And she panics and she runs off to the underworld. And so Hades and Persephone decide to make a deal because Zeus is very much like, let's call him old-fashioned. He wants Persephone's virtue to be intact when he marries her, for example. He wants her to have this like good girl image to her and stuff. So they decide to basically ruin this image publicly by doing stuff, and that is what this book is. This is very much like in-your-face smut. I think this leans on, it toys with the line between smutty and erotica. I don't think it's necessarily full-on erotica, but it's, I mean, it might be. Maybe I just don't fully know what erotica is, but if I've read erotica, this is the only erotica book that I've read, so like, I don't really... Someone tell me, because like, I don't know. That said, I mean, I can see it, but at the same time, I just thought it was fun. Like, it was what I wanted to read at the moment, and I was buddy reading this with a friend even though I'm not sure she's actually finished reading the book. But I was buddy reading it with her at least. And so, I don't know, I just thought it was a fun time. Like, I could imagine reading this book, having a glass of wine with some friends and sitting down and talking about everything that's happening in it, which again has to do a lot with smut. So the characters are a bit of like caricatures, I will say that, and it's not like there's a whole lot of world building either, but I don't think it's necessary for a story like this, so, but that's pretty much all there is to it. And it's currently also sitting at a 3.74, so it has the same rating as the Atlas 6. So I'm very much like, I rate books for what they are. Like, I am not going to compare a rom-com to a high fantasy book. I'm just not going to. They both have their good sides, and bad sides. They both have their qualities and downsides, you know what I mean? So I'm very much like, is this book good for a rom-com? Is this book good for a YA fantasy? And for this, I thought it was okay. I think it did a good job for what it is, you know? Now we're moving on to another one that this one I didn't enjoy. This one I might actually full on kinda, this is the only book that I have full on purposely DNF'd. It's, spoiler alert, by Olivia Dade, sorry. There was an Olivia already, I got a little bit confused. In this book, we follow a girl a woman who writes fan fiction. She writes fan fiction about two characters that she ship from this, like, the biggest TV show series in the world, the most popular TV series in the world. And while reading fanfic, she also has this friend that she talks to a lot about fanfic, like her actual friends in real life and her family don't know that she writes fanfic, but she has this really good friend, online friend, who knows, and they correspond over it all the time. He's read all their stories and everything. Like, they're just, everything's out in the open, except she doesn't know who he is in real life and he doesn't know who she is in real life. And as it turns out, the guy that she's writing with is actually the dude who plays the lead character in this TV series. So the guy that she's he plays the role that she writes fanfic on. They end up meeting in real life because of something with like cosplay. He's very impressed by a cosplay that she does of the lead character, the woman, in this twosome. And he's like, we should go on a date. And so they do, and things take off from there. Again, while they don't know that they actually know each other. And I DNF'd this. I thought there were bits of it that was funny. Like, there are these things in between chapters that aren't like normal text. It's like chat messages, for example, or texts, or it's stuff from manuscript or something. I thought those bits were probably my favorite bits, but I got to about 72%. It's very specific, but I'm gonna go with it. And then I was like, something feels off about this to me. So I went on Goodreads just to read a review because, first of all, there was something about the book, the writing, that just didn't vibe with me. And then I also had this like feeling that there was something else off about it. So I looked it up and it turns out that this is actually based off of Jaime Lannister and Brienne of Tarth? Yeah, Brienne of Tarth from Game of Thrones. However, the story is not about Jaime Lannister, it's about the guy who plays Jaime Lannister, Nikolai Coster-Waldau, and that felt incredibly awkward all of a sudden. Like, you can write fanfic about fictional characters, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the love hypothesis because it's a Raylo fanfic. It's not about Adam Driver and I forgot her name right now, Daisy. It's Raylo fanfic, but this is a fanfic about a real person, and that just felt so off to me. I felt so weird because I'd just gotten past a smut scene and I was like, I don't know. I felt like I wouldn't have liked that about myself. Like that stuff written about me. So I just stopped reading it. It's currently sitting at 3.71, which is not bad, especially not for a rom-com. They tend to get around like 3.7, actually 3.6, like if they're really good, 4 point something. But I just couldn't with this after I learned that it was fanfic about a real person. That made me feel so strange. If you like to read it though, I'm not judging you at all, just want to make that very clear. Like, you do you. I felt weird about it, so that book's not for me, unfortunately. This next one I'm also really surprised about because I actually thought that it was a very charming YA. It's Violet Made of Thorns by Gina Chen. See, the thing about this book is that I think it was marketed wrong because our lead character, at least it was said that she's a very morally gray character, but she's not. If you look past that and you're a fan of fairy tales, you will probably like this. I will say she stings, but she's also called Violet and she stings, so like it kind of makes sense. I did not mean to, like, that was totally not on purpose. I just realized as I said she kind of stings that's the title, but like it makes sense. She's supposed to she's very self-protective, but she's not morally gray. So in this one, we follow Violet, who is sort of like a seer. She can see the future, but in a very specific way. She has to touch people to be able to tell their future, and they also come in like different strings, so your future is never set. She works at the palace or the castle where the royals are, and she's basically the royal seer, if you will. I think that's about her title. At this palace, there is the king, first of all, but there is also the crown prince and a princess. So the crown prince, his name is Silas, and Violet have kind of bumped heads ever since she got to the castle, and he's been threatening her by basically saying that when he's crowned, which is soon, it's going to be soon, he's gonna get rid of her. She's gonna have to leave the castle because he doesn't want her there. So that is the thing that's bothering Violet, but at the same time, the king has also asked that she's supposed to lie about Silas's love life and say that he's going to meet the love of his life at this ball. It's very important. There's a whole like prophecy looming over this thing at the whole time. It's a bit confusing to summarize, but I thought the book was good. I'm just gonna leave the summary be as it is right now. Violet is left with a choice though. Is she gonna lie about Silas's future, or... because if she lies about Silas's future and it turns out that he actually ends up finding the love of his life and he gets crowned, she's gone. So she's kind of like, she has to decide if she wants to follow the king's orders or if she has to stand up for herself as well and make sure that she can stay. There's a whole thing. It's a bit hard to explain. It is explained in the book though, and I personally didn't think it was confusing. But I think this was marketed as like, people love morally gray characters, and Violet is not a morally gray character. Their romance is also, oh yeah, because her and Silas are bumping heads, but they're also kind of like a little bit crushy on each other. You know, the whole deal. And it's very hot and cold. Like, it's very hot and cold. So I think that might have turned some people off as well. Like, it's a bit confusing to keep up with at times, but that said, I fully enjoyed this. I thought it was great. I'm a huge fan of fairy tales, so to see like a nod to different fairy tales throughout this book, I thought that was so much fun. Didn't mind the characters. Violet is maybe a little bit too prickly, but honestly, I understand it, her being her situation. I fully understand it. She's not had an easy time, so of course she would be very self-protective. But other than that, I don't know. I don't know why this is rated so low. It's sitting at 3.68, so like we've passed this 3.7 point. I think I'm gonna have to read some reviews on this because I don't fully get it. I thought it was fun, except a little bit hot and cold. And also, there was something about the ending that was a little bit rushed. I do remember that. You know those endings that are like a little bit too convenient to? We're kind of entering that territory with this one as well. The ending was a little bit confusing. But I'm looking forward to the sequel, so. Next up, so this one I kind of do understand why. So which book is this? Fifth? Sixth book is Girl, Serpent, Thorn by Melissa Bashardist. And this was you kind of go into this feeling like you're promised something by the synopsis, and then it turns out to be a whole different thing, which really disappointed me. And I'm kind of guessing that's why it's gotten this rating, because it might have disappointed other people too. Also, there's a case of insta-love in it, which I just, yeah, okay. So we follow a girl who can basically kill or poison people by touching them. She's been kept isolated for her whole life. People don't really see her. She's a princess, by the way. I should probably have said that. She's royal, but she's been kept at the castle, isolated because she has this power to poison and kill people. But then it's her brother's, the prince's, wedding, and of course she wants to go. So she goes, and funny enough, on that day, she decides to go out in public. Among other people, she meets a guy who fully accepts her. And then it turns kind of weird from there, because I don't really know what to say more than that, but that's really not what this book is. And that's the problem, I think, with this one. Also, the whole insta-love situation that is kind of like I get that, oh, I gotta watch out what I say with this one. I get that you don't want to spoil anything because you want it to be a surprise, but that said, you cannot market this as being this thing when it then takes a very extreme turn and turns into something completely different, which this was. I think it's why I also didn't like The Dragon's Promise, for example. We're going to talk about that in my wrap-up in December, but it just kind of, you're promised something and then something happens in the story that's supposed to really surprise you, so it's not really teased in the synopsis. But how are you going to know if you like that direction and that storyline if it's not actually mentioned in the synopsis? You're kind of going into it blind. And for a book this short as well, because I think it's about 300 pages, it just wasn't really working for it, I think. So I got really frustrated while I was reading this. Unfortunately, I think I finished it out of pure, like, sheer stubbornness, basically. It's currently sitting at 3.68, so it's not a horrible rating, but I understand that it's not, like, I understand why it's not doing great. It's a shame because the cover is, like, stunning. Cover's so pretty. I love the cover. And now we're entering the low fives, so getting a little bit nervous. I feel like I've been very negative throughout this video, which feels like a very stark change, contrast to what I usually say, because I'm very easily entertained. Like, I'm not that critical of what I read. I just like to be entertained, you know? However, next up, I do remember talking about this in a wrap-up and actually fully saying my opinion on this, which was not that positive. It's Realm Breaker by Victoria Aveyard. I think this has several issues to it, and I'm gonna have a hard time explaining the synopsis and summarizing the book, but there's an evil guy and there's a girl who's supposed to be able to kill him as the only person on the earth. She has an ability of some kind, and so there's a group who knows that she has this ability, who basically decide to escort her around the earth to find these different portals to close them because demons are coming out of them, or something like that. Meanwhile, the evil king is also trying to take over the world by marrying the princess, who also happens to be evil. I think that's the best way I can describe this book. If they're not called demons in the book, just imagine demons, okay? So my problem with this was a lot thicker than it was, like, than it had to be. It did not have to be 500 something pages. 570. It did not have to be 570 pages. There's a lot of point of views in this one, like a lot. One of them shows up once and then is never heard of again. To this day, I don't know what happened to her. She rode off and then you never heard from her again. Like, I don't know why. Why is that a thing? I do like that one of the points of views, I think it's the princess who is with the evil king. I do like that. Did not need that much of it, but like for a story, but I think her point of views were actually my favorites. She's a very cunning lady, so. But as for the group that we follow, I think Victoria Aveyard had a very fleshed out idea of what every person in this group was, but then it didn't translate super well onto text. I don't think they were fleshed out as much on text as they were supposed to be. You also swap between points of views quite often, which is weird because they're always together. It's very rare in this book that this group actually splits up. It does happen a little bit now and then, but generally they're just together in a group, and then there's like random points of view swaps between them, which I don't feel was needed. It just added to the length of it because then suddenly you needed to hear a train of thought from one person that didn't really matter because no info was relayed. It was basically just emotions, but nothing came from these emotions either. Like, the emotions didn't have a consequence. Anyway, so I think the premise of it sounds interesting. The whole synopsis sounds like it's very grand and it sounds like it has a lot of promise, you know, but it wasn't very well executed, unfortunately. I was very bored throughout points in this book, and that's very unfortunate. These are my plot points. These are the important plot points. For 570 pages, there should be a lot more important plot points, but there isn't. So that's Film Breaker, and it's sitting at 3.66. So I'm not the only one who wasn't impressed, but yeah, that's all I gotta say. So we got 4 more books. I've just found out that I've recorded for half an hour already. That's a lot. I'm ranting today apparently, but next book we're talking about The Roommate by Rosie Danan? Danan? I don't know. Wait, Danan, that's the name from Crescent City. I was trying to remember that earlier today. Okay, anyway. In this book we follow 2 people. So one is a girl who's kind of been crushing on a guy for a while, and then she's moved like across the country, the US, to basically be close to this guy. She's crushing very heavily on him. He's not aware at all. He does not know. So after she moves over there, doesn't know anybody there other than him, he takes off on tour and decides to let out his room, like rent it to someone else who happens to be a porn star. Yes, this is where we're going with this book. Just embrace it. And so our girl, who's a very like good girl, finds herself in a bit of a situation. She doesn't know who he is to start out with, and then suddenly she finds out and she gets very nervous around him, but they're roommates. He does not have limits. It's a whole situation. Stuff happens. Stuff happens. There's a good message in this one, I will say that. Like, very how do you say that? Pro-sex education for women, but not just necessarily sex education, also like actually making it good for women. Okay? Like, I like that message because I think there's a lot of people who should know a little bit better. But they don't, unfortunately. Other than that, this was ridiculous at times. It was very smutty. Like, it was very smutty. I have borrowed this from my sister. She basically just handed it to me and was like, this is smutty. Read it, there you go. And I'm like, okay, I'll do that, I guess. But it was fun. I thought it was fun. It's just a nice, like, light rom-com with a whole lot of smut in it, but also a bit ridiculous at times. I have found better rom-coms, I will say that. So it's sitting at 3.64. I don't think I have much else to say about this, to be honest. So I'm just gonna leave it be. But it wasn't like, if you're just looking for a bit of a ridiculous rom-com with a lot of smut in it, it's not bad. It's a bit caricature and ridiculous, but I don't know, it's kind of fun at times as well. This one, though, I could definitely rant about for a while. So next up, 3rd book, we're talking about Blood and Honey by Shelby McEwen. I know that this is a sequel. I have purposely included it in the video despite it being a sequel, and that is because the first one actually has a fairly decent Serpent and Dove. A fairly decent rating, and then this happened. To this date, this is most definitely one of the worst books that I've read, which was such a shame because I loved Serpent and Dove. The thing about Serpent and Dove is that supposedly it was meant to be a duology and then it was turned into a trilogy, and if that's true, then that really shows in this one. Because this is super slow, long drawn, lot of fillers, I don't want to call them plot holes, but there was a lot of stuff that just did not, timeline-wise, didn't make sense. All of a sudden, one group had teleported to another group, and it just did not make sense. I'm gonna watch out what I say with this one because it is a sequel, but as for the first one, at least, we follow Lou, who is a witch, and Reed, who is a witch hunter. And they he doesn't know that she's a witch, but something happens, something unfortunate, kind of causes them to they land in a situation, and unfortunately for them, but also quite fortunate for us, because I thought this part of it was quite funny. there's a marriage of convenience happening, or like a forced marriage actually I should call it, between these two that are supposed to be enemies. They don't know that yet. Lou is not the most welcoming character. I thought she was funny, but she's not super nice to read. There's also forced proximity, one bed, you know, the whole thing. And I thought the first one was really fun. I thought it was charming. I loved it. And then this happened. I think that's probably also part of it because a lot of people seem to really like the first one, and this just doesn't match up to it at all. I don't know why I continued reading this, maybe in the hopes of the third one making up for this, but it really didn't do that either. What happened in this book, the important stuff, could probably fill out like 100 pages total or something. Such a shame. So I understand why. I understand that this has a low rating. I understand why. It's out of pure frustration for the people that actually loved the first one. It's currently sitting at 3.56, which is definitely not a good rating on Goodreads. So we're getting close to the really, really bad ones. The last two are also not any better in my book. So yeah, I'm gonna try to make it short because I could probably rant about these for a while, but I'm gonna try my best, okay? I'm gonna try my best. So the second worst book that I've read, according to Goodreads. These are not my personal opinions. Well, I mean, the ratings are not my personal opinions, but I would say generally I don't think they're that far off, but the second one is Book of Night by Holly Black. I do think part of the rating is due to the fact that a lot of people thought this was going to be something that it didn't turn out to be, and that is because Holly Black wrote The Cruel Prince, which is massively popular. I did read reviews from people thinking that this was going to involve fae, which it does not. The Cruel Prince is very YA. This is not YA. It's a lot slower. The Cruel Prince is very fast-paced, so they're very much not in the same, like, not the same at all. And of course, that's disappointed people. That said, I think I read this before I read The Cruel Prince actually, and it made me scared because I did not like this one bit. I am gonna have issues finding redeeming qualities in this book, I'm not gonna lie. I think I gave it 3 point something still, but that's just because it's not like it's the worst book on the planet, I don't think. Stuff still happens in it. It's not pointless, but a lot of it didn't really add up, and for a lot of the time in this book, nothing really happened. Everything felt very slow. There was a lot of, this is how it is, like a lot of telling us instead of showing us, and I don't really know. At least regarding her and Vince's relationship, the lead character and her boyfriend's relationship. But in this book, we follow Charlie, who is a bit of a con artist. She is hired by, how? See, now I'm gonna run into issues trying to explain the whole shadow magic system in this, but essentially you can, or some people at least, can learn to control their shadows, which is a very sought after ability to have, but it's also not everyone who can learn it. And so there's a group of people, I can't remember what they do, but actually several groups of people that tend to ask Charlie to do different jobs for them. But she's kind of tried to get out of the game and just keep to herself. She's a bartender these days when the book starts. Unfortunately for her, she is sort of drawn into it again because there is a guy who wants the Book of Blights, not the Book of Night, but the Book of Blights, and he is basically going to hire Charlie to get the book for him. She doesn't really have a choice, and so there's also a situation with her boyfriend Vince who's very mysterious, but I think that is pretty much what I'm gonna say about the story. She basically finds herself in trouble again after having tried to stay away from it for so long. That was also like half of the book, I think, though. I didn't realize that the synopsis would take up half of the book. I don't think I read the synopsis before going into it, so it just felt really slow. Like nothing really happened for a very long time. There were a lot of flashbacks. Some of them could have been left out. It was also confusing, the magic system. I don't know if it's the descriptions or the information that was relayed that made it confusing, or if it's just a confusing magic system. It could be both. I don't really know, but it was confusing. The ending was cool. I appreciated the ending, but not enough to actually make me interested in the sequel. So unless it gets like massively well received, I'm probably not gonna look into it, I'm not gonna lie. It also took me like, for a book that's less than 300 pages, I think, although there is a lot of text on each page, I'm not gonna lie, but the book is still like 300 pages. Let's see, a fair amount of text. But it took me like 2 weeks to finish it or something, because I just didn't want to read it. I thought it was so boring. I'm so sorry. Anyway, this is also the fairy loot version if you're curious. So it does come with like pretty awesome illustrations. I'm not gonna lie. Like I really like these illustrations. This is Charlie looking pretty fabulous. And this is Vince in all his very mysterious glory. But overall, this was not the book for me. I have heard from other people that they enjoyed it, but I've also heard from a lot of people that they didn't. So it might be for you. I can't tell, but did I say what it was sitting at? I don't think so. 3.56, so the same rating as Blood and Honey. It's not great when they're closing in on 3.5. It's really not, it's not going well for the book. So lastly, at a whooping 3.51. Oof, we're entering territory where usually only like problematic books enter. No lie. We got Lakesedge by Lyndall Clipstone. And this book is not problematic in any way. It's just not great. Which is such a shame. Look at this cover. Like, this is art. This cover is so beautiful. It sounds promising. A fantasy romance, gothic, horror vibes, ghosts, magic. It sounds so promising. A haunted mansion, mysterious guy who's kind of a beast, but not really, you know, kind of a monster, but not really. Sounds promising. And then you go into it and it's just, ugh, okay. So we follow two siblings. I've actually just ranted about this today in another video. I apologize. Actually, that was the last video that went up. But we follow two siblings, a big sister and a little brother who are orphans. They've not had an easy time. They ran off from their last... No, they didn't run. Well, they tried. They tried to run off from their last ward and... they're not having a good time. But then one day, the monster, I don't know why he's called a monster. It's in the synopsis, so that's why I'm saying it, but like, you can see he's not a monster. I think it's because there's a rumor about him, but I can't really remember. I think it's a rumor that he's killed his family or something, but anyway, he finds out that the young boy, the little brother, actually has magical powers, so he takes the two siblings off to his mansion. He's a young man, by the way, not an old creepy man, just a young creepy man. And while they're there, there's vibes, hauntings, ghosts, maybe, and mysterious things happening. I'm gonna leave it at that, but also our lead character, our lead girl, kind of finds out that he's not as much of a monster as everyone's saying he is, you know, yeah, that sort of situation. But that said, the biggest problem with this, okay, aside from the writing, which even I can tell is not great, it's not good, it's very choppy. It's a debut though, so like, I will not be too harsh because debuts sometimes are a little bit off in the writing. Like, they have to kind of grow into it, if you get what I mean. I'm pretty sure if I wrote a book, it would be awful as well. The writing would be terrible, but this was not great. The writing was not great. It was very choppy. Aside from that, our lead girl is the most frustrating lead character I've ever come across. She's hysterical. She doesn't know how to count to 10. She doesn't know how to take a deep breath. She has no sense of self-preservation whatsoever. And like, not just to save her brother, but just in general. I don't know why. I don't know. That I remember, like from the start until like halfway through it, I was frustrated with her. Then it kind of cooled down for a little bit, and then the last 20%, I was frustrated with her again. And I'm pretty sure that most of the reviews are probably gonna mention that, so that sucked, okay? I'm sure some people will love this book. This book, though, was not for me. I can't deal with a lead character who's like this, and having read a few of the reviews on the sequel, it sounds like she hasn't gotten any better, unfortunately, the lead character. So I'm just gonna leave that series be as well, unfortunately, because it is a stunning cover. Like, look at this art piece. You know? But that was quite a long rant. I feel like my throat actually hurts by now, and I sat down thinking I was just quickly gonna summarize the books and just say a quick comment, and then I got started ranting, and then I just didn't stop. So I apologize for that. If you want to check out any of the books, the synopses, you can click on the links in the description box. If you have other opinions on the books, let me know. I know I was very non-sugarcoaty today, but I was just feeling it, so I apologize if you liked any of the books. You do you. I respect other people's opinions completely, fully, so yes. But that is all I got for you guys today. So I hope you enjoyed this video, despite it being a little bit more on the negative side. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up, but also if you're new here and you want to stick around for more videos like this, but also TBR videos, wrap-ups, readathons, and bookish unboxings, and whatever else we do here on YouTube, definitely consider hitting the subscribe button. That's all I got for you guys today, so I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.
Oh, you know you're beautiful, you know you're beautiful. night.